Síguenos en nuestras redes sociales y suscríbete.
Short, but I think it's an incredibly moving story, and it's lasted over the years. I mean, it was written in 1939, and I think that Thurber created this iconic character that everybody can relate to. The idea of somebody who has this potential inside of them, has all these sort of dreams and incredible imagination in their head that they can't express in real life, and I felt very connected to that idea, and even though the story doesn't really take, the short story doesn't really take the story out into the world, it's just sort of a little slice of life, I think he created a tone there that had this melancholy and this sort of nobility about this character. The idea that the regular guy, you know, anywhere in life has all this potential inside of him that we don't see. So that was enough for me to want to make a movie about that, because I thought it was a very real feeling that a lot of people have. Thanks. Well, you know, directing and acting is kind of, it's inefficient. It's hard because you wish you could be two places at once and you just can't. But I think you know that the challenge is really, I think, for yourself when you know that you have got it good enough that you can move on and go to the next scene. And that's really an internal question that sometimes you don't have the answer to, and you can rely on other people on the set. But if you're asking too many questions of other people, then people wonder who's in charge. That's kind of, that comes along with the process, and I found that as every time I do it, I learn more about it, but I make mistakes. Sometimes it's not the same mistakes. And ultimately, it's kind of about going with your gut feeling, and you learn as you go along in terms of what you see. I get the movie, the dailies back, and I'll see the footage that we shot the day before, a few days before, and then I can sort of see how that related to what I was doing, so I kind of could correct off of that. But ultimately, it's not really a very scientific process. You just kind of rely on the other actors. I talked to the actors and the crew beforehand, and I talked to them about what the process is going to be like, and that I'm going to need to rely on them sometimes and to indulge while sometimes we have to redo a part of the scene that I'm in because, you know, I didn't get it right, or, you know, since I'm in the scene with them. And usually the actors get on board with it, and they're really, really helpful. And you end up just being very reliant on crew and cast and the people that you trust. Yeah, in terms of the characters that I played in the movie? Yeah. Well, for me, what I liked about what Steve Conrad wrote in his script and the approach to Walter Mitty and his fantasies was that I think in earlier incarnations of the story, Walter was fantasizing about being other people. And in this story, I always felt that Walter was fantasizing about being a different or better version of himself. So it wasn't really about trying to get outside of himself, it was trying to be more himself, a more fully realized version of himself as an Arctic explorer or as a superhero, but they're all versions of him. And so in terms of playing that, it really was just trying to tap into different aspects of Walter. So it wasn't confusing really, it was really more about trying, it actually made it a lot clearer because it was all Walter. It was just Walter being different versions of himself. More confident or stronger or older or whatever it was. And so that made it was a very clear through line, and I think for the story I really liked that was thematically part of what the movie was about him trying to realize who he was as opposed to trying to be someone else. dreams are, well, my dream was always to make movies and to be a movie director. That's been my dream since I was about 8 or 9 years old. So I'm living my dream for sure. And beyond that, you know, when you have a family and you have kids, you know, you start to dream about doing things with your kids and watching your kids get older and have their life and being a part of that somehow. So I dream about having experiences with them and traveling with them and watching them, you know, become adults and fulfill their dreams. You know, that's definitely part of it. But, you know, I think I'm pretty simple that way in terms of, like, I'm very happy doing what I'm doing. I love making movies and talking earlier about being creatively challenged and feeling engaged in something. And so I feel very fortunate to be living out that dream. Very important in the movie. I mean, music in general is important to me. I get inspired by music, maybe for me even more than movies. So movies have a whole different type of inspiration for me, and I love movies. But music is something that immediately and directly can affect you emotionally. You know, in a matter of seconds. While a movie is something that, you know, happens to you over the course of a few hours. But so the music and the marriage of images and music in the movie was very important to me, putting that together. And I wanted it to evoke a tone and a feeling to me that's sort of indescribable, and that's a very personal thing. So I listened to a lot of different music when I was working on preparing the movie, and then as we started to shoot the movie, we sort of honed down the music that we were using to about 30 or 40 songs that we really liked. And then as I started to edit the movie, I honed that down even more. And the composer, Theodore Shapiro, is, I think, a very gifted composer. And he wrote this theme that really, I felt, connected with the idea of Walter going on this sort of inner journey. And then there was an artist named Jose Gonzalez that I was listening to of those 30 songs. And he's a Swedish singer-songwriter. And I reached out to him and asked him to see the movie, a very early cut of the movie. And he came to New York and we watched the movie together. And he and Teddy Shapiro worked together. We used a lot of Jose's songs and his voice. He started to hum, because I feel he has a really special voice. I wanted his voice to be Walter's voice in the movie. So he started to hum over the soundtrack. And so throughout the movie, you hear him humming along with the orchestra. And then there are songs of his that he performs with his group called Junip. There are 2 or 3 of his songs in the movie that are by Junip. And then he sings the end title song also. That was written by Ryan Adams and him, and Teddy Shapiro and Ryan Adams. So Jose's voice to me was sort of like this component that really brought the film together for me when I was editing it. And I feel he's just an incredible artist, and anything he sings sounds beautiful. No, I haven't. Yeah, we haven't done any work in Mexico yet, but I would like to. I mean, sort of the primary focus, and the reason I started the foundation originally was because of going down to Haiti. I went down to Haiti right before the earthquake, and then went down afterwards, and wanted to do something to help down there, and focusing on education too, trying to help with education in that country. But there's so many places that you know, deserve attention, and for me, I'm trying to not overstep what I feel I can help with in some small way. So hopefully someday it'd be great to do to help with some programs here in Mexico. But at this point, we haven't explored that, but I'd love to. And actually, when we were researching the movie and we contacted Life, we met a guy named William Shapiro who was basically the guy who was in charge of transitioning Life magazine from being a real magazine into being an online magazine. And so he was a great resource for us because he experienced what Walter is experiencing in the movie. And he was the guy who was in charge of taking care of all the pictures. So when he saw the film, he wrote me a very nice email that said that he really felt that it connected for him on a deep level with the experience that the people who worked at that magazine had, because they really did care so much about the work that they did. And I've talked to other journalists and people who worked at magazines who, echoed that sentiment and said, it's nice to at least have some sort of acknowledgement for the work that is going away in this digital world. So it was nice that Bill Shapiro connected with that.
Para más información visita Apple Heading de blog.